Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming to our LinkedIn Live. Welcome. My name is Ana Maria Emerson Cornejo. I'm here with Linda Espinosa Valencia. We are the co-founders of Ventura Collective. We are both presently living in Mi'kmaq Nation and Ganyangahaga Nation territory. We are honored to have today Kathleen Johnson and Templeton Sawyer as our guests for this LinkedIn Live, where we're going to discuss the DISM certification, the Diversity and Inclusion Service Management certification based on the ISO. First, we're going to do a presentation that Linda is going to guide us through. And then we're going to invite our amazing guests to have a conversation with you all.
Hello, everyone. We're just going to take a second to put up our presentation.
Yes. Wonderful. So a little introduction on who is Ventura Collective. It is a Latina women-owned DEI consultant collective. We are also, Linda and I, members of the SEC, the Standards Council of Canada, which is the Canadian representative arm within the ISO, the International Organization for Standardization. We really carry our values as our North Stars, building community, doing our inner and outer work, and harness our collective impact and joy to really promote systemic change. We are now going to be talking a little bit about our strengths within the ISO 30415 standard. We are the first diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant in Canada to be certified on the DISM based on the new ISO 30415. And also, we are introducing this certification, the DISM certification, to professionals in Canada and in Latin America.
And actually, now the US and any English speaking person. So anybody can join our certification.
Yes, that is a bit of news for sure. So, Linda, I'm going to hand it over to you, and for you to give us a little bit of what is diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility in organizations, companies, and governments.
Thank you so much, Ana Maria. So welcome, everyone. If we ask 100 people, what is diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility in organizations, companies, and or governments, we're probably going to get 100 different answers. And actually, that's exactly where our main challenge resides, that we're facing right now. Next one, Ana Maria. Thank you. So the primary challenge that we face as DEIA professionals and or advocates is that many organizations have their own idea of what DEIA is. Some perceive it as merely a matter of morality, virtue signaling, or a nice to have. Some others treat it as an ad hoc initiative or a charitable effort aimed to helping individuals from equity-deserving communities. Rather than a strategic and integral part of the operations of an organization. Without a consensus or a standard, it is hard to understand the vital process that DEI is in organizations. So in reality, DEIA should be a management system that is vital for the function and success of any organization, just like legal, just like finances, cybersecurity, and any other system. Of course, a mindset, but today we're not here to speak about the mindset. Let's talk about the management system.
Thank you, Linda. And I think the ISO 30415 really brought us all this new understanding, right, of what really is DEI and A, as you're mentioning. So here it is.
Yeah. And let me tell you that when we talk about DEIA as a management system, we're picturing this house that has a strong foundation, strong pillars, and a roof that it protects all the efforts that we're doing in DIA. Next, Ana Maria, please. But unfortunately, right now, this is what we see. Sporadic efforts. Some organizations have some kind of strategy that is usually based on the good intentions of one leader or the little group that volunteers for DEIA. And we see lots of training, lots of external relations, with websites and social media, and very little data extraction or internal infrastructure, that is development of policies, ERG groups. Next one, please. So then what happens, when the winds of change come, all our efforts are blown away. The change of leadership happens, all our budget goes. Political rhetoric, companies, we hear them in social media saying that they're going to backpedal their efforts. Budget cuts, that's the first thing that goes. DEI, fear, all these societal events affect us when we don't have a system that protects our efforts. Leaving usually the one person, a DEI person, or the small department, feeling the aftermath of all these events, and unfortunately either leaving the organization or being fired because DEIA doesn't work. So a DEIA service management system is a strategic roof that will allow us in any organization to plan, deploy, manage, and protect the services and projects that we consider to be DEI today, like training, data extraction, internal infrastructure, external relations.
Thank
And
you.
as you can see in this graphic, all services have the same importance, as they are the pillars that are sustaining the roof of our house.
Yes. And within the previous slides that you were sharing, really what has been groundbreaking regarding this new standard, the 30415 standard, is really bringing that roof, right? That structure that holds all the services. Even thinking of training and policy development, roles and responsibilities, deploy services, and audit, right, as the important steps in order to solidify the services, right, that we didn't even have a vocabulary before of understanding that training, data extraction, internal infrastructure, and external relationships are services, right, that should be the base of any sustainable EDI structure. Now with the ISO, we have that sustainability framework, basically. So tell us a little bit on how do we start building our DEIA service management system?
Thank you. So we are here to actually help you all, introduce you one of the best tools out there to actually start building that strategic roof, which is the Diversity and Inclusion Service Management based on the international standard in diversity and inclusion, ISO 30415. Before we start with that, Ana Maria, maybe you can talk to us a little bit about what is the International Standard Organization for Standardization, for those who don't know about it.
Thank you. Perfect. So it is a non-governmental independent organization with the main base in Geneva. It has over 167 national standard bodies, like, for example, the SEC, that Linda and I are members. It develops international standards, right, that support all innovations in all industries. There is over 22,000 standards that the ISO has created in several industries like IT, health, manufacturing, anything to do really with export and import, and for example, quality management, like the very well-known ISO 9001. So basically, the ISO is in charge to providing solutions to global challenges, and it is the highest body that develops the highest standards for any industry worldwide. In particular, go ahead, Linda.
I just wanted to add that a very important fact is the insurance industry, both in Europe and the US, are already looking at the ISO standard 30415 to underwrite products because the ISO 30415 and diversity and inclusion is the golden standard on diversity and inclusion worldwide.
Thank you, Linda. Absolutely. And this particular standard, the Human Resource Management Diversity and Inclusion Standard, ISO 30415, was developed over 10 years. And it was developed like all standards under the ISO are developed with members all over the world. It is relevant to 3 of the 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals: gender equality, decent work and economic growth, and reduced inequality. And also, very importantly, it is guided by the International Labor Organization standards of human rights at work.
Thank you, Ana Maria. This standard was designed to be measurable and scalable to the needs of all types of organizations, either for profit or nonprofit, all industries, including government. So it encompasses an exhaustive maturity assessment that includes all areas of the organization: governance, human resources, product development and delivery, supply chain, and other constituents. Something very important about this standard is that it produces a domino effect, spreading DEIA to suppliers and other organizations involved with either companies or governments.
Exactly. Thank you, Linda. Especially because there is very clear actions and measures, especially on all those governance, human resource, product, service development, but the supply chain, right? And in that supply chain is really the seed for that domino effect, which we'll talk a little bit about later.
Thank you. So the ISO 30415, and I know the name is like, it rolls out of the tongue, but that's how they name the standards. It provides a roadmap to achieve DIA sustainability. It's one of the biggest challenges as well that we face, right? Like that sustainability of all the efforts that we do in DIA. And the democratization of responsibility and risk related to a lack of DIA. So if you remember the image of the person, crying, like pulling their hair, that's what this standard allow us to avoid, The standard is an excellent tool to avoid a situation like that because it gives us a roadmap, roles and responsibilities, KPIs. So one person is not in charge of solving systemic inequalities for a whole organization or a whole city or a whole country, right?
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about the Diversity and Inclusion Service Management certification based on the ISO 30415. And soon after that, we'll have Templeton and Kathleen join us.
Thank you, Nadia. The diversity, and if you can go to the next one, the Diversity and Inclusion Service Management, or DISM as we call it, methodology based on the ISO 30415 was developed by James Felton Keith. James is an award-winning engineer and economist turned labor leader who was the first Black LGBTQAI+ person to run for federal office in the US. In his work as activist, he realized that companies and organizations couldn't understand where DEIA is. And that's why it was so hard for them to implement any kind of meaningful systemic change. So James consulted the team at the US ISO working group to develop the ISO 30415. And once the standard was published, he then developed the DISM methodology. And I quote, James says, we've used change management as a map in other disciplines like accounting, with certified public accountant, change management, and information technology, IT service management. We've done this before. We can do it again with DIA.
Agree. So, what is the Diversity and Inclusion Service Management DISM methodology? So, it introduces the standard, the ISO-30415 standard, as a service management framework, just like any other service, as we heard and read the quote from James. It is also, it provides really the tools, right? The tools and the roadmap to develop an organization-wide strategy through a maturity model. And this is something that we believe the DISM is of true strength in the understanding that this process of adopting the ISO 30415 is definitely, as adopting any ISO standard, a long-term constant evolution, but it's also done gradually through the understanding that there is a maturity model to follow and there is a maturity curve to follow within complying with the standard.
It's a continuous improvement system versus I just got there and I don't have to do anything else, right? But it's a continuous improvement. Thank you, Ana Maria. And just diving a little bit further into this, and this, we only have 2 or 3 slides left, and then we'll move into our amazing guests. The ISM methodology introduces an inclusion maturity model integration. Can you move? Thank you. Where you assess and or audit, depending on what stage you are in your process, design policy frameworks, assigning roles and responsibilities throughout the organization, and finally deploying services. But what do we see today? If we go to what we see today is that most organizations start in maturity 4, right? Start deploying services, start deploying trainings and website statements and all that without any kind of previous information about what is happening, what are the important pieces for your own employees. And that's why the sustainability can be there. If you're not centering your efforts in what is and what you already have or what your employees need, then the sustainability, it will be very hard, right? So it becomes performative versus needs-based. So that's why many times we're left not understanding why our efforts are not as impactful or have the results that we desire.
Exactly.
And finally, the diversity and inclusion service management allows organizations to learn where they are on their DEI efforts and risk management, identify the opportunity areas, help write down policies that will support accountability, both for individuals and organizations to ensure DEI sustainability, and gives tools to both employees and organizations to protect themselves.
Exactly. Thank you.
And now we're going to bring our wonderful guests. We have Kathleen and Templeton, and I will let you both, please, Kathleen, introduce yourself.
Sure. Thank you. My name is Kathleen Johnson. I am a senior consultant of DEI at our Provincial Health Services Authority in British Columbia. And I also am CEO and founder of my own firm, Creative Culture Strategies. I'm calling in from what's known as Victoria in Sanghi, Esquimalt, and Wasanich territory.
Thank you, Kathleen. Templeton.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Templeton Sawyer. I describe myself as a community leader. There's so much hats that you wear when you're doing this type of work, but within my full-time role, I am the leadership programs coordinator at Private Work Canada. So my role revolves around doing a lot of DEI work with corporate organizations, government leaders, and also nonprofits especially. And I'm also a nonprofit leader as well for an organization called Alive House that is supporting refugees and international students facing homelessness here in Canada. And so, yeah, our office is located out of Toronto, which is under the Haudenosaunee and Shabak and the Wet'suwet'en people. And so, yeah, just want to acknowledge that.
Thank you so much both for being here. We're really, really honored to have you and have this conversation with both of you. Both of you are doing such important work in real vital industries and sectors in our society that we are very thankful for that, and also for your presence.
Okay, well, let's start with our questions for our lovely guests. Okay, first of all, let us know, how do you start working in DEI, and what made you decide to, join this kind of certification? Whoever wants to start, please go ahead.
Kathleen, I'll let you go first. I want to hear your thoughts. I'm curious.
I became aware of this thing called DEI after 2020. I didn't know it existed before. It was after I officially got into it in 2022 that 2021 that I realized, oh, there's actually people that have been doing this for a really long time, mostly in the United States. But in Canada, I hadn't really heard of this thing called DEI before. So I got into it, probably could blame my parents. They were community builders. We were one of the first families in Alberta, in Calgary, in the late 70s. And so they had to build community from scratch. They were politically involved. I grew up with that. So that's how I come into the work. And when it opened up as a field, I immediately was interested. During the pandemic, I earned a DEI certificate from Cornell U, and I have a bachelor's in sociology and cultural anthropology. So I've always been interested in cultures and people and how we're different, how we're all human. And so it was a natural fit for me.
Thank you.
Well, for me, I would say I'm an island boy. So DEI, coming from the Bahamas, I never heard of DEI until I came to Canada back in 2016, where I got the opportunity just to learn about the importance of acceptance, the importance of just acknowledging, the importance of just learning about people's passion, skill, different ways of just serving people with empathy and stuff like that. And what really got me deeper into this work is when I got the opportunity to teach the importance of allyship into the classrooms with some folks in Mexico, being able to teach some high school teachers and educators how to lead their students into being allies in the classroom and stuff like that. And so that gave me like, hey, there's more work to this, and like also people do not know how to do this work. And so I was like, okay, I should try to delve more into it. And I got to do it more when I was working with my former employer back in Halifax, Nova Scotia, Teamwork Cooperative, and being able to delve into that. And I've done like some certifications here and there, but this specific certification really took me into a wow moment to allow me to think about how to take this work into when it comes down to board level, when it comes down to organizational structures, and also it allows me to think from out loud, how is my organization serving in its capacity from a strategic development standpoint. So yeah, passionate about it for sure. Yeah.
Thank you so much, both of you. Like, we are so much better with you both working in this field. We really appreciate both of you so much. And, you've been working in it for a bit now, right? Like, you have some experience, and, you've been doing great community work and advancing it as much as you could, right? So what made you decide to join this certification, the DISM certification based on the ISO 30415? Because some of you already have, certification in Cornell, same as us. So what was about this that, piqued your interest and decided to join?
I guess,
Go
yeah, go ahead.
Curiosity. I feel I saw Black Talent Initiative, BTI. They were offering a full scholarship to be a part of this program, and it was out of curiosity, because I've never heard of the methodology and I've never seen it before, and so being able to learn and I'm always a learner, so I think all of that has makes me to want to join. So yeah.
Shout out to BTI, that is our partners, and we're launching our second scholarship with them coming up. So, Kathleen.
Yeah, I was really trying to think, and I really don't think I have a wonderful story behind how I found out about it. I think it was Instagram or LinkedIn. I saw an ad, and I am coming into this work in an organization that is very large from activism and politics. And so organizational knowledge is not something that I really had, and I really wanted to understand that piece. And so I felt like this would fill in the gaps and in my understanding. And so my employer was offering help with it. So I thought, why not go for it and see how it adds to my understanding of how this is done strategically and organized in an organization as big as mine.
Thank you both. And Kathleen and Templeton, once you joined the certification, could you share what was a takeaway or something that you found, new or worth sharing about the DISM certification?
I'll let Templeton go first.
Oh, you want me to go first? Okay. Yeah, for sure. I think just the overall assessment piece, to be able for me to identify how to evaluate different organizations from a board level and stuff like that, and of course the maturity levels. The maturity levels was really something that gives me like a identification of like, okay, this is the level that this organization is at, and how can we get them to a next stage and stuff like that. So really, that's what stood out to me, and I'm really passionate about evaluation and how we can continue to allow folks to evolve. And so definitely taking a lot of those tools with me as I go into this work, and we're also hoping to try to plug something into our programming as to how we continue to use this to our DE specialists and ERGs within Private Work Canada as well. And so, yeah.
Thank you, Templeton. I remember the same one. That was also something that I found really innovative about the DISM methodology, how it brought that assessment tool to our toolkit, and how is it that we can actually, as DISM certified professionals, go into an organization and evaluate the maturity of that organization based on the standard, right? Because we're not really evaluating the maturity of EDI of that organization, because the understanding of maturity of EDI could be very different for many organizations, right? Some organizations are going to be, well, we've been training on EDI for 5 years. We're really mature. We have, certain months of the year but is that really truly maturity? And is it really truly maturity against the standard? The answer is no, right? Like, it's just to assess based on the standard, what are the actions and what are the systems that the organization is putting in place to comply with the standard, and eventually comply it in the sustainably, right? Comply it sustainably. So thank you, Templeton. I really appreciated also the GISM maturity assessment. Kathleen, what about you?
I think hands down, it's the permission to call it a business service. And I think after, because how we came to be here is so tragic, that I think we went right into the heart space, and it was appealing to people's good graces and their sense of morality and all of that. But over a long period of time, that's not really sustainable. You don't ever want to lose that heart piece, but I think, after a while, it was like, okay, well, we need to measure this, and because we need to support it with money, and so some really hardcore things had to be done, for it to be sustainable. We know it's needed. We don't need to prove that as a business case, but to organizations, you do. And so this really turned the light bulb on for me, like, yes, because in the activist space, I would have friends that said, you're now you're a tool of corporate now, and congratulations, kind of thing. So there has been a divide between what work can really be done inside of corporations. And so this kind of makes things measurable. It doesn't rely on the talents of the superstars. It's irrespective of that, and it assigns this work depending on your job, and so it's able to continue even after people with a special talent with this leave your organization. So I think that was the biggest takeaway for me, and the stories. I think the stories from people that were helping present the information to us was huge. It really connected us. It really connected me to the material. So I was really appreciative of that, personal stories as well.
Thank you, Kathleen.
That absolutely as well resonates with me. Like that democratization of responsibility in the organization, it is such an important piece, because as we saw in the presentation, usually is for one person to solve everything, right? And with that person in 6 months, they can't solve all the, sexual harassment, racism, whatever it is, then, that's it. This doesn't work. Let's put that money somewhere else. But when each part of the organization has a role to play in this important process, then it's harder to say like, oh, well, it didn't work because so and so didn't apply the policies properly, or because the roles or responsibilities weren't assigned, because the accountability piece is not there, right? Versus, oh yeah, we didn't do it at all, so whatever. So the democratization of responsibility is a huge piece for us, as well as know that everybody has a role to play in DEIA.
Yes, and I mean the standard, the way in which to comply with the standard and apply it in an organization is specifically that, is assigning roles and responsibilities throughout the organization, throughout governance, throughout HR, throughout product delivery and development, product and service delivery and development, I should say, and supply chain and other constituents. So there is that important aspect of democratization of responsibility and democratization of risk. Thank you, Kathleen, for sharing what was your insight in terms of the relief of being able to call it a business service or a business management tool, because as you mentioned, it is very important to keep the heart of it, of this vital seed within organization, which is ultimately human rights at the work, right? And at the same time, yes, acknowledge that training conversations, hard conversations are very important to keep that heart open and going. But really what needs to happen is actual change, right? People need to be paid equitably. People need to be protected from discrimination. There has to be an acknowledgement of systemic racism within the organization and policies to have real repercussions on those on that violence. So there needs to be accountability and there needs to be structural change, and that's what we believe the ISO 30415 can offer us that that structure to create that change. And as you said, Kathleen, also to measure it, right? We absolutely need to measure those actions.
Thank you, everyone. Well, Kathleen, I'm going to direct this question to you. So you wear a lot of hats, like many, Black women and other racialized women, like lots of things. I can't even believe you have time to do. She's on TikTok too. Everybody go, well, we have TikTok, go follow her because she's awesome. But you wear many hats. So, you work in an organization, you have your own consulting company, you're writing a book, it's about to be published. What what are the advantages that the DISM is bringing to your different roles?
I think it's giving me purpose and direction in the spaces that I'm in. Because quite often you're, like, as I mentioned before, I'll just piggyback of what I said before, and you're bumbling in these spaces going, okay, I'm trying to read the room. Is this a heart group? Is it a head group? What am I? And so you're trying to shape shift and appeal to all these different sensibilities. And this just says, look, this is what it is, and this is how it works, and this is how we're going to do it. So I think it kind of gave me more confidence in spaces that I'm in. And it also gives me something to give to other people that are bumping around in the dark as well. And so that's been helpful. Even to give pieces of it has been really helpful. In our organization, we're trying to arrive at a standard because we have a lot of different health authorities underneath the PHSA umbrella. And so they formed a working group to arrive at a standard of doing this work. And so the standard people were using, the framework people were using before is no longer being supported. And so it can't evolve and change with us. So I think this is something that I've recommended people take this, and a few people have, and now I can see it mushroom. They're doing their plans based off of this, and so that's been really rewarding, because no matter how much education you have or expertise or whatever, this is a new field, and so it's been hard to get your footing in it. And so I think this gave me a foundation by which to do all the work that I do in a lot of different spaces.
Thank you, Kathleen. And Templeton, for you, I have a little bit of a different question, because you actually work for nonprofit. You work, many of your work is community organized and not nonprofit. And there's this idea that ISOs are only for big corporations with a lot of money. And it could be for maybe some ISOs are very, tech oriented or very, manufacturing and things like that. But this is about diversity. I was going to say in Spanish, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and accessibility. So what do you say to that?
ISO is definitely needed within the nonprofit sector, especially when it comes down to its strategic development practices, when it comes down to governing practices on how operations in a board is running, knowing each other's responsibility. I think what I like about the ISO is that it identifies whose role is playing, who's the keeper of this and stuff like that. And I feel like within this model, it clearly states and helps to identify whether it's an HR responsibility, whether it's a board responsibility. And I feel like nonprofits need it today more than ever, because I feel that I've sat on a lot of nonprofits and I've seen the chaos where diversity, equity, and inclusion was not like really put into practice. It was just a wording, or it was just a statement to be used and stuff like that. Or sometimes it was just let's just do this because it'll make us look good and stuff like that. And so I feel like there's a lot of things when it comes down to community development work, and I feel like there's much more training needed within the nonprofit sector when it comes down to the humility of this work and how we're servicing people.
Thank you, Templeton. And we really appreciate your perspective since you have founded a non-for-profit yourself. You understand the intricacies of what you were talking about, right? Of how to build the structure of a non-for-profit. And yeah, I agree. And, in terms of how the ISO, that this guidance standard can really guide clearly an organization of any size, particularly a non-for-profit organization, on how to properly, or I should say more effectively, build in order to be sustainable in the EDI efforts, right? And when you are starting up, you can do like an engineering backwards type of move, right? And know already what are your requirements from the ISO on those actions and measures that are actually the actions and measures result in equity, right? That's what it is. And I've been looking at the comments as well in terms of like, why isn't the ISO title, for example, including equity? And short term, it was a bureaucracy situation, right, where they really couldn't go back effectively enough to change the title. Having said that, equity is what the ISO 30415 actually brings when an organization complies with it, because for the actions and for the proper actions to be put in place in order for the measures to actually make sense, then that result is an equitable work environment in all main areas of the organization. So thank you, Templeton and Kathleen, for both of your insights.
Anything else? We appreciate so much your time. Anything that you would like to add before we move into questions from the audience? We have a couple of questions that we would like to bring, and of course to talk about our coming cohort. But anything you would like to add to this event, to the people listening to you all today?
I would definitely.
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. I just say I would definitely recommend folks to take this program. It's definitely beneficial. Be able to connect with amazing other leaders across the country and the world, and to be able to actually, feel that you're heard and you're able to take some of those resources back with you, which is really nice.
Yeah, and I would say you learn a lot from the perspectives of other people taking the course with you, because this field is so dynamic. There's people coming into it from all different types of backgrounds. So that teaches you a lot while you're taking the course as well, as the other perspectives from people from different backgrounds and industries taking the course.
Thank you so much, you all. We really appreciate your time and your perspective. We loved having you at the cohorts. Kathleen was cohort 2, Templeton was cohort 3, and you brought so much for, as we said, to learn in community. So thank you so much. Thank you for your time, and stay in touch as always. We'll talk to you soon. I will bring you back to our backstage so we can take some questions from the audience. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you, Templeton. Thank you so much.
Okay, what a great panel we had today with these guys. And I just want to follow up with the questions regarding why equity is not in the ISO, in the name. You know, the whole name of the standard is called Human Resources, Diversity and Inclusion, ISO 30415. It's very easy. But I mentioned before that it was developed over 10 years. And throughout that development, when the paperwork was submitted, because there's a paperwork that needs to be submitted at the ISO to be able to develop standards, equity wasn't a word used in that moment for that, as we know it today. Equity was only used as a financial thing, like to make equity. When that happened, before they released in 2021, the ISO 30415, equity was already, being the word everybody using. And when the groups tried to include that, as Ana Maria said, because of bureaucracy at the ISO, they said, well, if you want to add that word, we had to start over. Like, you can't just publish changing the name. So they didn't think it was worth doing the whole thing again just to add the word, because it really all the work within the standard actually, as Ana Maria said, leads to equity, leads to the creating systemic change to equity, diversity, and inclusion, being diversity a result of these efforts and not these quota things that we're seeing there's so much push against, right? Because it's only a performative action versus, the true systemic change that we need.
Thank you, Linda. And we also see questions regarding what are the similarities between ISO 30415 and other ISOs like ISO 45003 or ISO 14001 or 9001. So just a little clarification. As per the question, the ISO 45003 is an ISO for occupational health and safety management, specifically psychological health and safety at work. Then the ISO 53800 is is an ISO, for example, for promotion and implementation of gender equality and women's empowerment at work. And as per the question, the ISO 14001 is regarding environmental management systems. So more than what are the similarities, we would like to bring this perspective. The ISO 30415 really is the tree branch that can support all other measures or all other ISOs within this main 30415. For example,
Ana Maria, I just want to say, I think you meant the tree trunk, not the tree branch.
What did I say? Oh, yes, exactly. The tree trunk, the main, right? The main tree trunk in order to hold all other measures. So, for example, if we're talking about the ISO 45003, which would be occupational health and safety management, then that can be very well held by the main implementation of the ISO 30415, and you can continue adding the actions and measures of different ISOs within specific areas of the organization, right? Specifically, in terms of gender equality and women's empowerment, the ISO 53800, that is the perfect example of an ISO that can be held by the ISO 30415. So the implementation process would vary depending on the organization and the goals that each organization has. But we hope we answered those questions. But thank you for bringing that up, because absolutely, whenever we work with organizations that have already knowledge on other ISOs, the work becomes a lot more streamlined, right? Because we are speaking sort of the same language. There is an understanding that there is a long-term commitment, that there is different actions and measures, and obviously that there are roles and responsibilities, because all ISO standards definitely share those main or most important ingredients for their compliance.
As well, I would like to add that the ISO 30415 can be that we're talking about the roof, right? That holds all our efforts. And in different contexts, let's talk about a little bit about Canada, when we talk about truth and reconciliation, right? So a question that we get a lot from organizations that, are wanting to work on truth and reconciliation is like, how is the ISO, gonna help those efforts or help us with that? And I said, like, well, what is your policy on this? What is your policy in truth and reconciliation? Well, we don't have one. Okay, then, like, if you don't have any of the work, if you haven't, talked to community and all that, that's what the ISO is going to help you create that roadmap to say, okay, number one in the roadmap is like, why do you want to do this? What is the goal to start with truth and reconciliation? Are you in community with indigenous peoples of your area? Like, have you talked to them? Do what are the measures that they're asking for your organization to do? There's the 94 calls. Some of them are regarding, corporations and companies in Canada. So it is that container that can hold all those efforts, but with direction, with a system of continuous improvement, and not or like I did this, and then I don't have to do anything else, right? But you're in continuous improvement with your efforts, right? And there's a democratization of responsibility and of accountability.
Thank you, Linda. Specifically regarding of truth and reconciliation, it's called Call to Action 92. That's very specific towards businesses. And another important point to mention is that the ISO 30415 is a standard. It's a guidance standard. And because of the nature of this ISO standard and many other ISO standards, there is an understanding that there has to be a constant revision, right? A constant revision of how are the changes that we're implementing in the organization, what are the impacts, what are the revisions that need to make, what are the changes in roles and responsibilities. There is a constant revision and improvement and testing, and that is also why the maturity model that the DISM methodology brings to apply this standard is really strong, because that helps us also visualize that the maturity, that this implementation is a maturity process.
Ana Maria, should we move to talk about the cohort coming up for those who are interested in join us? We have a cohort coming up March 4th. And let us talk a little bit about what's the certification, what entitles, like who can join, all of that.
Wonderful. I'm going to bring up our shared screen. So we'll take a little minute here. But while I do that, please, Linda, share the dates and a little bit of the agenda, and I will be bringing up that slide right away.
I'm going to do one better. I'm going to bring Kathleen back, if she's okay, so she can talk about her book. We didn't talk about her book. Kathleen, talk about your book. It's coming up. And it actually mentions the ISO, right? So
yes, it does. I wanted it to be something that helped people actually do the work. And so it's the framework is there. And thanks for checking that and correcting the work as well, and making sure that it's presented in the best way. It's called Thinking Outside the Boardroom, and it's creative solutions in DEI and anti-racism, simply because I think we need to inject a little more creativity in around problem solving and engagement. And so that's what it's for. Hopefully it'll be out for Black History Month. That's what I'm crossing my fingers for.
Oh, thank you.
Is there a pre-order link that we can have, that we can share, or not yet?
Not yet. That's getting set up, but I do plan on traveling and speaking with it, and so hopefully I might even see some people that are on this call in their city, as I'll be doing Canada and maybe some dip down into some nearby states.
Wow.
Excellent. We can wait. Congratulations on that. That's a big milestone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for giving me an opportunity to mention it.
Of course, Kathleen. Well, stay with us for a little longer. I'm going to just be sharing the screen in terms of more details on the actual DISM certification that's coming up. So as we mentioned, it will introduce the ISO 30415 as the standard as a service management tool, right? And we will provide DEI professionals with the knowledge on how to effectively and efficiently implement this standard within the organization. The structure of this course is a 6-week hybrid certification. So there is asynchronous learning and weekly 90-minute live sessions that we do. This is really where we learn in community, where we learn as a group, and where we can also strategize our moves and our projects within our current workplaces. The platform that we use is Mighty Networks, And the live sessions take place every Tuesday from 12 p.m. to 1:30 p.m. Eastern. And here we have the dates for cohort 4 this March 2025. Please, Linda, you can go ahead and give us a little bit more detail on that.
Yep, it starts March 4th, and it's, as mentioned, is 6 weeks. So we hope that you can, if you're interested, you can join us. We're going to share the link for the registration. And if we have a little surprise for everyone, if you join us before February 1st, then you get a preferential investment of $1,400 per person instead of $1,600. And we have group discounts as well in case you have more people. If you have 5 people or more, there's even a deeper discount for those who want to join us. As well, if you belong in an equity due community and for whatever reason, like we want to remove barriers. If you are part of an equity due community, please contact us. If you can't, if there's an economic barrier there, we'll be happy to work with you and, make sure that you're able to join us. We want everyone to be able to join us.
Thank you, Linda. And just a little reminder of that special offer that we are sharing with those who would like to register early on. So really, we can't wait to engage with more of you. Thank you for your time. We have a little bit of 3 minutes left to our presentation, but if there is any more questions, we are going to be minding the chat and see if we can answer them.
Not, I'm just gonna put here the link to the certification to the registration form. Yeah, it's there now. And thank you so much for your time. And we'll look forward to see some of you and the certification in March. If not, there will be another one in the fall. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you to Templeton and for Kathleen for their time and their wonderful perspective for the work that we're doing as a community.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for coming.